Hi, this is Anne Marie, and we are excited about introducing a couple of guys that I am acquainted with, have had the pleasure of knowing for a while. Skip is big into film production. Eric is a national astrologer and also teacher. And I have been watching them on Facebook and seeing them kind of conglomerate together in a prayer page. I think many of the people that have had loved ones pass or just having situations in their life come to their page and everybody gives a prayer for them. So I don't know a lot about it, but I think it's awesome. So I'm going to start out with you know I'm going to start out with Skip, and if that's okay, Skip, would you please tell us about yourself?
I think you got it pretty good. I'm a filmmaker. I also run a nonprofit, the Shea Memorial Foundation, which we actually help women filmmakers is one of our fellowships, and we give out local scholarships. Um, that's pretty much my life right now. That's it takes up all of it. So
And do you have a class, or I've noticed some pictures on your site that showed you some classes or filmmaking classes or anything. Are you still doing that, or?
well, it's more with the foundation where we do a fellowship for first time female filmmakers because we love alliteration. That's why we named it that. But as most people are aware, at least in Hollywood, 7% of the movies are made by women.
They
So,
are. I
so
didn't know that.
yeah, right. So our goal is to at least start off in a very small level because we're not a huge foundation. So we give seed money for to make their first short, and then I help mentor. So if I guess that's as close to a class as we do. So we mentor, we give them the money, and then the following year the film will have its world premiere at the Shea Film Festival.
At the
So
which festival again?
the Shea Film Festival.
Shea.
It's based on. I should probably explain the foundation.
Yeah, yeah.
I lost one of my twin daughters in a car accident in 1999. She was 16
Oh,
years old. And the following year, like all of her classmates got together and they did a walk around this little town of Uxbridge and raised $10,000 for a scholarship in her name. So we
wow.
were given this opportunity. It's not like we went out and wanted to start it. And we later on made it a 501c3. And with nonprofits, there were all the local, fundraisers. You do a raffle or a party or heaven forbid a golf tournament. That was the last straw. We did a golf tournament, and I hate golf. So what am I doing? So I was making films. So I said, well, why don't we have a film festival as a fundraiser? And then that was like one day, 6 blocks of short films. No, 3 blocks of short films. And this year it's going to be 5 days, probably 40 blocks of films. We have 23, I think, features now from all over the world.
Wow.
It's just grown into this incredible thing. So that's when we decided, why don't we help women filmmakers get in the door? And I'm happy. I mean, it's easy to get them to make their first one, but several of them have already made their second and are on to their third. So that was the goal.
You know what I think would be a dramatic film for a woman is someone that's going through the evacuation right now in the Middle East as the Taliban ban.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, the hysteria that I hear from the women that are so afraid that everything is going to go backwards and child brides and everything. What a movie that would make for a
It would.
woman. Eric.
Anne Marie, what do you want to know, dear?
Tell me about you and tell us what's going on with the astrology alignment at this time,
Well,
especially I would like to know where does the evacuation and all of the world events come in too, besides just the COVID?
whew, well, there's obviously a lot going on. It's a busy world. Um, I should perhaps first say I am an astrologer. I'm a consulting
Uh-huh.
astrologer. I write a column of forecasts that appears at the Spirit of Change magazine website. And soon I'll be writing for my own website, which is being reconstructed as we speak. But
Awesome.
I've been doing that for decades, really. And that's actually how Skip and I met. He came to a talk I gave at a whole health expo here in Massachusetts some years ago now. And it has been a while. And we have charted stars together, and it's been wonderful to watch his film history unfold as he keeps producing excellent work and receiving recognition for that work. And he's really quite an inspiration to me, as I'm sure he is for a lot of other people. And that's one of the perks of being an astrologer. You get to meet some really fascinating people.
You have met some interesting people.
Yeah, it's been one of the great privileges of my life, and knock on wood, it continues. As we are speaking in August here of 2021, just for the record, we're continuing to deal with a very important juncture in American history. We might as well start with the view from home. And our country, of course, was founded back, at the time of the American Revolution. And Pluto is now returning to the same position it held on July 4th, 1776.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
yeah, it takes about 248 years for Pluto to orbit the sun. And when we look at the history of empires, we find that the majority of them collapse during this particular transit.
Wow.
Those that endure typically also go through some cathartic moments and a restructuring. We have as one of the symbols for Pluto the phoenix rising from the ashes. And there's plenty of smoke and plenty of flame, and folks tend to want to focus on the beauty of the phoenix, but I would describe the past few years as pretty painful for me as an American. And regardless of what political persuasion you might hold, I think by and large there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the trajectory of our country. And so when Biden said before the last election that we're in a battle for the soul of America, he really, I think, hit the nail on the head, because Pluto has to do with power and how we use it collectively, especially. And we have to basically come to grips with the abuses of power, get in touch with what our values are, whether we're just going to, mouth the words about freedom and independence. And, does that mean you're free to infect your neighbor, or should you take common sense, steps to safeguard your community? I mean, it's all, every little issue that we, can think about these days seems to be controversial, where back in the days when we were all kids, there was no controversy about it. You pretty much.
Why was that? Why
Pardon?
was that? Why was that?
I'm old enough to remember the wake-up call of the 60s.
Yeah, well, of course.
In the 50s, people sometimes say, there are politicians attempting to recreate America of the 1950s. And, I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle at this point. The other notable thing going on right now astrologically is a testing relationship between Uranus, the progressive planet discovered during the American Revolution. So it's associated with down with the king, let's have a democracy. From the get-go. 1781 was the year it was discovered. And it's in a testing relationship this year with Saturn, a planet more representative of law and order. And if we were to sort of distill that to a simple bumper sticker, it would read question authority. So nobody's right, everybody's wrong. Like the old song says, we are desperately trying to find people and facts that make sense. And it seems like every day there's a new reason to question what you thought was right yesterday. The instability remains with us for several more months. It will get easier in some ways next year, but it will also become more challenging because that Pluto return is exact in 2022. There'll be 3 exact return dates. So politically, those midterms next year are going to be critically important as to determining the future of the country.
That's going to be a scary time.
Well, I think every day is pretty scary. I can only take small amounts of the news now as it is. And I've been, I mean, Skip and I've had endless discussions about politics and history, and but it's too painful. I mean,
are you a history buff, Skip?
I'm not. I don't know that I would say a history buff, but I mean, I'm fascinated with it. But I'm sort of, we get along talking politically. What he said, question authority, I have to chuckle at it. That's been my whole life. I've never not, and no matter who the authority is.
What kind of teenager were you?
Troubled. I would say troubled is a good word. It was a rough patch of my life. So, but I wasn't outwardly rebellious that way. I mean, I was more of a child of the 70s. My high school years were like 74 to 78.
So you're younger than Eric?
Yes.
Okay.
I may not look it, but
no, I didn't know. It's just I wondered because I'm probably more like Eric. I graduated in 70, I think. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm so my rebellion probably, even though I was obviously aware. I mean, in 12 years old, I'm reading the newspaper, about Watergate. I was fascinated then. So I've always been fascinated. But then, my other years turned into the more of the punk rock type of rebellion.
What was your favorite band?
Oh, from that, it was totally the Clash, hands down, the Clash.
What was your favorite band in those days, Eric?
In the 70s?
Yeah. In the area, you can be in the late 60s or 70s.
I had a lot of favorite bands, but I sort of moved to the woods and stopped paying attention to pop music for a good part of the 70s.
I don't think anything I listened to was of the pop. I was more of the underground music scene.
Oh, I've always been a sucker for pop music. I don't know why. Still to this day, I like a good mindless pop song.
Well, I was on Facebook the other day and I joined this group, the Fillmore East, where I did happen to see a few concerts. Not to date, but
did you see Janice?
I did not. I missed Janice.
Okay,
it's one of my regrets. But I noticed one of the posts, there was a lineup. This is one night at the Fillmore, the Steve Miller Band, Miles Davis, and Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And the most expensive ticket was $550.
Right.
Now it would cost $1,000 at least.
If you could get the ticket. And it was a whole nother world back then, really. I mean,
yeah, poor musicians were a dime a dozen. And now all those poor musicians are retired and probably either living on their wealth or living in the streets, whichever it is. But so Skip, since you're the baby of the family here, where do people have their movies then when you're in your town or your city? What city is it even?
Well, I live in Uxbridge. I'm central Massachusetts would be the best way to describe it. I'm close to Worcester. I don't know if anybody knows where the hell Worcester is. So Providence, Rhode Island might help people.
Okay.
Like 30 miles north of Providence.
Okay. And
He's just outside of Boston.
oh,
About
okay.
40 miles
Just
outside of Boston, or 5 hours outside of Boston for traffic wise.
Okay. And so when you have your film festivals, is it different buildings that have them,
No,
or?
we're in, well, yes, the answer to that is yes, but we do it in, we used to do it in Southbridge, a town closer to, like, on the cusp of Western Mass. But because of COVID, the place that we went to has closed. So we're in Sturbridge this year. Eric would appreciate this, at the Sturbridge Host Hotel. That's where we met, actually. So we're going to be there for a full week, still in that neighborhood, because it's very convenient for people from Boston, from New York, from Rhode Island, all to come to the festival in that location.
Do you have a big showing then? Is it a big event?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's 5 days. I mean, the last 2 days are pretty, I mean, huge for us. I mean,
Right.
it's we're just talking hundreds, not thousands.
Right.
But it's pretty big for us, and the awards night is pretty much sold out.
Wow. So what do you, would you compare it kind of, what is that one that Robert Redford had or whatever?
Sundance.
Sundance. Would you compare it to kind of like that kind of thing?
No.
No. Oh, okay.
We are not Sundance.
Okay.
We're not even Moondance. We are tiny, 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 tiny. We are in the film festival coalition with Sundance. So we're in a group together. But no, I'll put it this way, for nonprofits. Sundance is worth millions. Millions, and I can look up their 990 form and see the taxes that they've paid and everything. If you went to look up our 990 form, we don't have to file it because we don't make that much money.
That's okay.
We just
But
sign a form. So we're tiny, and I don't know how much I actually want to grow. This has been a discussion amongst us and our board, because I don't want to get too big either, because we are very supportive of local filmmakers. We're very supportive of women filmmakers. And the bigger you get, the more you end up catering to names, because that's
Yeah.
what brings in money.
but not Sundance. Sundance doesn't. Isn't like, I mean, it's not to compare the population, but it's all about new faces, isn't it? New
no,
filmmakers.
that's the market.
Oh,
That's broad. I mean, you said Robert Redford. I mean, you start there. It's already a big name.
okay.
And most of it is curated, most of it is invite, and so there's a connection with someone in Hollywood.
Okay.
Like, they're calling them independent films, but they're made for anywhere between 10 to $100 million. That's not an independent film in my world.
No.
So it's still Hollywood-esque. That's why, actually, in the same city at the same time, another film festival called Slam Dance started, to actually be about real independent films, and they are much more closer aligned in mission to us than Sundance is.
Okay. Yeah, I've never really understood quite what Sundance was, but I thought it was independent films. One of my favorite films was Sling Blade, but then again, we're talking about somebody that's had a name.
Right.
So Eric, you said that part of this, what's going on, is related to a full circle back to the past. Would that be why the storm of people went on? Was that kind of like a sort of resurgence then of the British attacking, I'm having name forgetting right now. When all of the people stormed on not the White House, but what was that?
The assault on the Capitol?
The assault on the Capitol. Do you think that is kind of a semblance of what's going on as far as the resurgence back to our day of history?
I don't know that it's a resurgence. Look at it this way. It's an opportunity for rebirth.
Okay.
So what we see with Pluto historically, and we've only known about Pluto since 1930, not even 100 years. And its orbit, remember, is almost 250 years.
Wow.
So humanity has not consciously experienced a full orbit of Pluto. And I have my doubts whether we will. But the issue of power, who has it, how it's applied, these are all parts of how Pluto energy gets expressed, both individually and as people, but in the collective especially. And Pluto, remember, in mythology was called the Lord of the Underworld. So we think about Pluto as having this knack for exposing corruption and abuses of power, especially. In the fall of 2008, Pluto entered its current sign of Capricorn. And that same month was when George Bush went before Congress to say, I need a blank check to bail out the banks on Wall Street. Hello, the taxpayers footed the bill.
Yeah.
What did we get back in return? Not a whole lot.
Nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we have shipped $2 trillion to the defense contracting industry. And what do we get out of Afghanistan in return? Well, the women there got 20 years to, I guess, socially get educated and take on jobs.
And then feel and have the negativity of having it all taken away. But
yeah, it's horrible. This is classic with that Uranus Saturn. It can pull the rug out from under any situation in the blink of an eye, literally. We think of Uranus as earthquakes and unexpected surprises.
This is probably something that you wouldn't know, but I always worry about poor Haiti. I always think about how it's so easy for me to turn off the TV and say, I just don't want to hear it. But then I think about being in that whole cycle of the wealthy countries and the power and then there's always Haiti. Yeah. And how does that fit into it all? Is that same
honestly
thing?
I don't. There are horoscope charts for countries. I do not know what Haiti's initial birth chart is. Mm-hmm. I'd have to do some research in the history and see when the current government was begun and hopefully get a date and some time and be able to look at that and maybe answer from an astrological.
I remember last time I asked you to give me Pope John's what about Pope John? And you said, well, I don't know. I haven't come here to talk about Pope John.
I can, if you have any questions about Pope John.
What about Pope John?
I'm the person to ask. No, I'm that was a half joke, because I don't know if you know my history, but I don't have a pleasant history with the church. So
I think I remember some abusive ministers in the process.
Yeah. So yeah. I would
but not to say they're all like that.
I maybe, I don't know.
I know. How would you know, and why would you even want to know? Yeah, I guess.
And I think, even if they're not, they're complicit by their silence. Much the same way, if you look at Black Lives Matters, how a lot of police are complicit by their silence. Right. It's the same thing.
Right. They don't want to know. They're like me turning on the news on CNN and saying, I've had it. I don't want to hear it. Yeah. I don't know. I think about religion, and I've said this story before. I went to my old lady tune-up, is what I call it, at the chiropractor. I go once or twice a month, to stay limber and stuff. And she asked me, she was telling me about her daughter going to communion, and that was a wonderful thing for her, and she's a very devoted Catholic. And I said, well, I got kicked out of catechism. And she looks at me like, how can that be? And I said, well, I asked too many questions. And the last thing I remember was the minister saying, let us shut our heads in prayer after my last question. And that night he called my mother and said, please do not let Anne come back. So anyway, she looks at me and she goes, so you're not a follower. And I remember not quite knowing how to take that. I'm a loyal person. I'm definitely loyal. But as far as a follower, I said, I think what you're saying, I'm a non-denominational spiritualist, and I think I think the world is going more that way, don't you think? Maybe?
I do.
I mean, I think that people realize that you don't need to have rules like the church for people to be ethical and to treat each other with love and respect. You will not fall into hell because you do not have a label. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, just the word follow. I mean, I'm struck by anyone who wants to follow anyone. Spiritually, politically. I mean, who wants to be led? That's always, and I think that's part of the insurgency on January 6th. These people desperately want to follow someone, and I really can't wrap my head around that at all, like wanting to follow. But in a spiritual sense, I do think, I think even statistically it's shown, at least in America, that we are becoming more and more secular, and people are using the word spiritual as opposed to religious now more and more. And I think that might even be the majority, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
I do too. And I was just talking to a friend that said her husband went to the small town cafe, and they were talking about how pleased they were that Mr. Pillow was having lectures now, and they felt that he was a very good Christian. And I'm thinking, how do you find a good Christian out of Mr. Pillow? But I guess it's all, again, how you look at things and the desire to see good people as secular religious people. So I don't know. I guess I just thought that was kind of an amusing little story there. Maybe Mr. Pillow will run for president in 2022.
I don't think he'll get very far.
I don't know. I heard he was trying to blame the insurrection on China, and a lot of people shook their head and said, I don't know, I don't get it. But anyway, despite all that, because I do live with a Republican, and I do live with I have to learn how to shut up when it's time to share political opinions. So I have fun when I'm with these shows, like people like you, because I get to talk. But so where are you guys going with this Facebook page? What started you on this Facebook page of the prayer page? Who started that?
It was Skip's baby.
It was mine. I mean, Eric, and I'll let him explain the prayer. Taught it to me, and then it was.
What do you mean? What?
Eric,
what do you mean?
Well, he said the prayer and explained what it meant, and really.
The robe of light.
Yes, the robe of light prayer, and I'll let him explain that. But I have still a cousin in Florida who is really battling cancer. So I thought, well, what the heck? Let's I want to start this for my cousin Paula. So that's who I started it for. And not only is she in remission, she's now a big spokesperson down there. I mean, it's scary to me. She's in Florida, so there are other health issues could be happening now. But
there's good people in Florida too.
No, there are, but there's bad COVID in Florida.
I know there is. I know that.
And so I wanted. I don't know what it was about this cousin at that time that made me think I need to do this, because there have been plenty of other people before. And I was aware of the prayer, but I just said, well, what the heck, let's run with it. And we were off to the races, and that was years ago. I mean, I don't know how many, but I'm going to say
How,
eight,
so
maybe.
wait, the page is that old?
I think so. It's old.
Really? I just realized it during COVID.
No, she's been in remission.
Oh, remission. I mean, the page that you and Eric have.
Yeah, well, I started
that
because of
old?
her cancer.
Okay.
When she was still in brutal treatment. So she's already 5 years past the treatment and more.
Wow. Just out of curiosity, I don't know if you've noticed how much Facebook has changed. I can't post anything anymore without them giving me red arrows up or red arrows down, saying, gee, this post didn't do very well, or gee, you need to realize how to say things so that you can sell yourself better. And I've been wondering, does that page get anything like that? Or do you probably get all the arrows up?
It's a private page. You have to be invited to join.
Oh,
So that
that's how that works.
must make a difference.
Okay. Yeah. So, Eric, what is Robe of Light prayer?
So the Robe of Light prayer is something I learned from my first astrology teacher, Isabel Hickey. And she had learned it from another woman spiritual teacher in Boston. I'm not sure when, probably in the first half of the last century. And Isabel was a world famous astrologer, a gifted psychic, and a very advanced soul. And she mentored me in my early days with astrology and a host of other things, because if you went to visit Isabel, you never knew who might be there visiting her.
Oh.
And so I got exposed to all kinds of psychics and mediums and, Egyptologists and various types of
Interesting.
what I used to call the lunatic fringe stuff.
Lunatic fringe.
But I'd say, I cut some chops there and got encouraged by Isabel to continue my studies with astrology. She was always very supportive of me, which was lovely. By the way, her birthday is tomorrow, August 19th.
Oh.
And she was a Leo. She could be fierce like a mama lion.
Really?
And I did see her, sail into people, total strangers. The alchemy of an encounter with Isabel was really what impressed me and led me to say, I want to do that too. I'm grateful.
And so is Skip part of the lunatic fringe?
He's got a different kind of lunatic fringe thing.
But yes,
Yeah.
In a word, for sure. That's 2 words, but so
Yeah,
Isabel hosted a Friday night group in Boston for years. She called it the Friday Night Fix. And when I first went, it was in an old mansion in downtown Boston, but they were outgrowing the space. It was just people were overflowing out into the streets. There just was not enough room. And her daughter was a dean at BU back then, Boston University, who arranged to secure, I guess it was a lecture hall for I think the science department or something. And so for many years it was held there. And Isabel might speak, but more often she would have a guest speaker who would talk about what was going on with the pyramid or, whatever. And the second 45 minutes of the evening would be a guided prayer meditation. And one of the prayers we worked with every week was called the Robe of Light. And that was sort of the healing, the core of the healing part of the evening. And I'll say the prayer, I'll explain a little bit about it, but I want to say that, from the time, 50 years ago when I learned about this, literally every week, people would tell miracle stories of, cancers going into remission, tumors disappearing, wife beaters stop beating, alcoholics stop drinking. I don't know if they got Republicans to stop being Republicans, but that's a whole nother discussion. Republicans weren't so bad back then. And the prayer goes, I clothe myself in a robe of light, composed of the love, power, and wisdom of God, not only for my own protection, but so that all who see it or come in contact with it will be drawn to God and healed.
That's a beautiful prayer.
And it's basically directed to any person, creature, or entity on the astral or spiritual planes that may be present. All who see it or come in contact with it covers a lot of bases. I found with practice, and this is something Isabel, had basically spelled out, that as you build up your light body, you can learn to project this energy. So with the healing part of the group, well, in a seated situation, we would pass the healing energy to the person to our left, the love and light energy, and receive from the right. So we were creating kind of a force field within the room. But we could project that to places like Haiti if there was an earthquake, or if we were trying to deal with some other tragedy, forest fire, or whatever, man-made natural disaster. More than once, we literally sent that energy out around the world. It got to the point where I would see it in my meditations going out to wherever we were directing it. There was an African-American student of Isabel's who moved to New York and was assaulted. And the fellow pulled a knife and said, "I'm going to kill you." And she had the presence of mind. She had been sexually assaulted. She had the presence of mind to say the robe of light to herself silently in that moment. And he freaked out. He's like, you're covered in light. And he dropped his knife and ran off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this is a very powerful prayer. You can put it around your car if you're parked in a bad part of town. I had a client call me once. She was about to defend her PhD thesis, and she was very nervous and frightened about having to go through what usually is an ordeal. I taught her the robe of light prayer. I said, you're going to say this tonight. You're going to imagine the room, because she knew the room where this defense was going to take place. And this was at UMass for Boston, for people familiar. But literally, so she fills the room with the light. She goes in the next day, does the defense, and it was the shortest in the history of the department, less than an hour. I think she said 45 minutes, and they offered her a teaching position on the faculty. So, that was a pretty successful outcome. I'm not going to say it was the prayer. I'm sure she put in a lot of hard work.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because I do believe that meditation, prayer, and Reiki all have the common denominator of energy, protective energy. And so I know that any Christian would probably, or religious fanatic would say, that anytime you send prayer and God and angels into something for protection, that it will be there for you because you're transporting it there. But I think that so many people would accept what you just said almost more in this time and day of non-secular religion, that it's a prayer for all. It's a prayer for everybody, regardless of how they feel.
Well, I agree. I think one of the key things that again, Isabel pointed out was when we pray, especially with something like the robe of light or the great invocation or the Lord's Prayer, we become a channel for that prayer energy.
Thank you. There you go.
It's not for ourselves. We're praying for somebody else's need. And she stressed that as you do that, you are the beneficiary of the same energy. It will heal you, even if you're totally focused on somebody else you know in need. You know, they can be hundreds of miles away in Florida. They can be, you know, in the next room. So often, you know, people even on the Facebook page for the Robe of Light will say, "Oh, pray for me," and they're missing the point that it's really about opening up and trusting in higher power to make the right decision, to make the right call. Because we as people with our limited awareness, we don't know karmically what's best for a person. You know, it may be that passing from that cancer will save them from a worse fate. We just have no way to know. So we're kind of sort of bringing a level of humility into the process, and make me an instrument of thy will. You know, you can say it any way you will, but it's fundamentally getting away from the "it's all about me."
One question that I often get in my readings is, I'm having a very hard time in life. Tell me why. And then it always ends up with, tell me what kind of karma these people that are all going to get for doing this to me. But I'm always amused by the fact that I am supposed to tell them what another person's karma will be for what they've done or not done, or followed the herd or whatever. And so I guess what I'm saying is, the victim of any situation, whether it be illness or abuse or bad luck or whatever, it seems to be that many people will go into revenge.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in, because I find that funny or odd to me, because I've always, the flip side of that, wondered when bad things have happened to me, like, what karmic debt am I paying? Because there's a reason why it's happening to me.
Okay.
So instead of keep shifting it, what am I learning here?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty much the approach I take with my clients. When we're sort of giving our power away and saying somebody's doing this to me, since we have a filmmaker here, the exact way I will often put it is, you're the star of this movie. You've written the script. And if people are abusing you, what are they showing you? What about yourself are they teaching you? Are they confirming?
Ooh.
It's only in a place of sort of altered awareness that we begin to have different options about the dynamics we create with other people. Anytime we create an opening where an alternative possibility comes into our awareness, we're opening a huge door to change, potentially. It doesn't guarantee it. Now, some people sort of glom onto that kind of thinking that, wow, it is my movie. I'm the star of this show. I can bring in new supporting actors and actresses. I can change the ending. I can bring in different music. And they'll come back to me in a few months, and they've quit their bad job. They've gotten out of the bad relationship. They left the house they didn't really like, and they've created a new self. And other people will come back time after time with the same old complaints.
So, Eric, are you now a life coach, or is this all part of your astrology?
Part of my astrology consulting.
Okay.
In the early 80s, I attended a college of the healing arts in California and got certified by the state of California as a holistic health counselor. But I've drawn on a lot of different experiences and teachings, doing a lot of spiritual questing, we might say, to kind of inform how I look at life and what I share with clients.
Okay. So what would you say, Skip, is the main theme of, and is there a main theme of many of the women that create films for you? Is it the victim?
No, actually, part of when we put out first people to apply, we're not just looking at we're looking at film as an art form. So some have submitted dance films. You know, she's an amazing dancer, and it was this wonderful dance movie. Another is that just did a comedy. You know, we've had documentaries. We've had an incredible experimental film that is a museum piece. I mean, it is meant to be shown in a museum.
Right.
So we're all, most of, if there is a singular theme, it's about self-empowerment, if there was one, because I think you can almost see that running as
Would
a
you
thread.
please describe what you think is self-empowerment?
It was, I'll use it by explaining what some people have said about the fellowship. They've you know, somebody, they would not have done it without our someone saying yes. They didn't realize that I think, and this goes from men filmmakers too, or a lot of people, that they don't need permission to make anything. Just do it. You don't have to get someone's permission for any artistic expression, and that seems to be in in a capitalist world, right? You need permission to do this because you need funds, and then you need to show that you're making money. But as a creative, you don't. There's something beyond that, and that we're our act of giving, you know, a little token of money and permission has opened a door to them understanding their greater creative power.
Awesome. So,
I think that's the theme today, creative power.
yes, very good. That sounds like a good title. Are you both grandparents?
I'm not.
I
You're
am.
not? You are. And what do your grandkids think of you?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, we just took two of them on a trip yesterday. Bella, who's the oldest, I've taken her concerts all the time. I've never asked and never thought to ask. So I don't know.
Did
I
you
really don't know.
did you do like film or like do acting or anything, like skits with your grandchildren or
Well,
anything?
they've made movies with me.
Ah, cool.
They've sent ideas, and then I just help them make them.
Oh,
Actually,
that is so cool.
the one that Bella wrote, and her very younger brother and sister, Jason and Clara, acted in it. That'll be screening at the Shauna Film Festival this year.
Oh, well, that's
And obviously they're because of me, they're slanted towards the horror genre. So
horror. Are you into
yes,
horror?
that's what I make.
Oh, you make horror movies.
I do.
So what is your favorite horror film type theme?
Well, my favorite horror film would be The Wicker Man. And
Oh,
that would
that's a good one.
probably be my, you know, if there was a theme, it's the folk horror theme. But mine was more like The Wicker Man, where the people who more are in tune with the earth take down the church, as opposed to the church ultimately winning.
Ah, so you're getting your revenge.
No, it's not revenge, it's entertainment.
It's entertainment, but knowing your story, it kind of helps you to be able to knock it to the man.
Yes.
May-
Well, I feel in the two, I've only made two features. But in two of them, I am exposing truths about the church, and using horror as the vehicle. I did prior to that, I did a one-man show about my life, basically, but I used comedy in that. I mean, you can't really talk about this stuff on stage, and
Right.
then you know, people leave, you know, looking for razor blades. So you can't really do that. You have to make it comfortable for them to hear these subjects. And then afterwards, there can be a greater discussion. And both horror and comedy, I think, are the best vehicles with that. I mean, I think of when the movie Spotlight was out there and it won an Oscar, and everybody's thinking, oh my God, isn't this great, for those of us in that club and that movement. And I'm like, no, people, it's a drama. Like, people will forget about this, in 3 weeks. But if you make them laugh about it, they'll remember the joke.
Interesting. I always say that about my readings. I always tell people I enjoy readings where I can laugh with people, and they'll come back if they can laugh with me, if they can lighten up a little bit. If it gets too heavy, then it may be enlightening, but on the other hand, it's and there are, huh?
It's bad for business.
It's bad. Yeah, getting real heavy is not good for business. So I think being human and being humorous and being real and being authentic is all about what I love about people who have passionate missions in life, that they can. I mean, I have never met Deepak Chopra, but I would hope that he can laugh about what he does at times. I would hope that he can be not always holy or not always enlightened, but that sometimes he could just sit down and be really obnoxious or not obnoxious, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Real.
I think he actually wrote a book on humor.
Did he?
And Mike Myers from Saturday Night Live and Austin Powers wrote the intro to it.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay, well,
yeah.
that's a good sign.
Yeah,
Can you?
he definitely has a fun side.
Good.
He refers to himself as Deep Pockets Chopra.
Yes.
Deep pockets. Now,
It should be very deep at this point, but
very deep. Yes. Well, you guys, I'm really, really happy to have you with me. And so we're calling this what again?
Creative empowerment.
sure, that's good.
Creative empowerment. Okay, that's what we'll do it. And have a great day. And I love both, and thank you for being part of my day. And you get some sunglasses on or a hat on there, Skip, because I don't want you to be in the sun
Under
too
an
much.
umbrella.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, keep up the good work, guys.
All right, you too.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.